Art Fennell, and welcome to this special edition of The Report. Today, we delve back through the pages of history to a moment that changed the world. It was dusk on April 4th, 1968, when a shot cracked through the air in Memphis, Tennessee, and in an instant, Martin Luther King Jr. was dead. His was a wonderful life of service, but how did it come to such a violent end on the balcony of the Lorraine Motel? For the answer, you have to trace back to the events that led up to that fateful day. And there's a lot you probably still haven't heard 40 years later. Here's my AFR special report, Murder in Memphis, Timeline to an Assassination. If you were scripting a prelude to a tragedy, then the situation in Memphis in early 1968 was the perfect backdrop. Just like the trolley cars coursing through the city, so was racism. Memphis was ripe with tension. In January, a new mayor had just taken office. Henry Loeb was widely regarded as one of the good old boys and was eager to exert his authority. The mostly white police department was corrupt, and many of the officers were on the take. Offset that with a population that was nearly 40% black. Many were poor and pressured to stay in their place. But a tide of change was rolling in, and behind it were the unlikeliest of the lot. Black sanitation workers, the men who picked up the trash. They were overworked and underpaid at less than $2 an hour.
No benefits, no rights, no nothing.
Taylor Rogers and Joe Warren were two of the many who were forced to work under deplorable circumstances, a job no white worker would do.
And that garbage would leak all over your tub. It had holes in it, garbage would leak all over you. When you got home in the evenings, you had to take off those clothes to keep from taking maggots in your house. And we didn't have no place to eat lunch. We had to stand up beside the trucks and eat lunch. And it was just some terrible working conditions. And, you know, the men were getting tired. When you can't speak up for yourself and you have to do whatever the boss said do, it make you feel less than a man.
The black workers tried to organize and form a union, but there were consequences from white supervisors.
He told us if you catch more than 5 people together, he was going to fight because he know you were talking about a union. 33 men got fired about the union, talking about the union. John was one of them. So 17 of them got back to work. So that's why we named this union Local 1733, because 33 men got fired, and there were 17 of them get back to work.
We were trying to gain some dignity, and we wanted Henry Loeb and everybody to know that we was men. And that's what we did. We took a stand and said we weren't going to go no more until we got some justice.
On February 12th, 1,384 black sanitation workers went on strike. Their picket signs read, "I am a man." For nearly a month, the trash piled up around the city, and anger boiled from city officials. There were protests from strikers outside City Hall, but inside City Hall, the negotiations went nowhere.
He stands up for what he knows to be right.
Mr. Chairman,
if I insult you by telling the truth,
I move we adjourn.
if I insult you by speaking and saying that these men have fought for this country, these men have died for this country, and all they're asking for is a little bit of self-respect.
It's been moved.
If I insult you, brothers, then I will go to heaven insulting you with the last
All
ounce
those in
of
favor
breath
of
that I
the
have in
motion,
my
signify by
body.
saying aye.
Aye.
No opposed?
No.
Pressure, lack of communication, and these men have not been to the mayor's office where this matter will be decided, or an illegal strike or work stoppage, which are unlawful in Tennessee, are simply not the ways to handle a problem. It has been held that all employees of a municipality may not strike for any purpose.
On March 5th, 116 striking workers were arrested during a peaceful sit-in at City Hall. And on that same day, it was announced that Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. was heading to Memphis in support. King saw Memphis as the perfect tie-in to his massive Poor People's campaign that he was planning for later that same year in Washington. He'd use Memphis as the springboard. On March 18th, King arrives and speaks to a crowd of 15,000 people here at Mason Temple.
Delighted I am to be in Memphis tonight
see you here in such large and enthusiastic numbers. As I came in tonight, I turned around and said to Ralph Abernathy, they really have a great movement here in Memphis.
Well, you know, that gave us momentum. We felt good because we knew that we was getting some support from outside.
A march and rally was planned for March 22nd, but it was canceled due to a record snowstorm, so it was rescheduled for Thursday, March 28th. The plan was for the marchers to gather here at Claiborne Temple, just south of downtown. And by 8 o'clock in the morning, these streets were already getting crowded. The march was to start at 10 a.m. when King was due to arrive. But King was running late that day. He was flying in from New York. He'd do the march here, and then he was flying right out to Washington. So by the time he arrived here, somewhere between 10:30 and 11 o'clock, there were police helicopters buzzing overhead, and some members in the crowd were already getting agitated. How much was riding on this march?
Everything was riding on the march because the union representatives were trying to get the union recognition for the sanitation workers. Sanitation workers was trying to get to be recognized really as just a man. That's why the sign came, I'm a man. And all of these were so important because these sanitation workers were treated so terribly bad.
Down historic Beale Street they came. By now, the crowd was estimated to be as large as 20,000 strong. King and other members of the clergy took the lead in the front. They locked arms and they moved forward. But King was clearly uncomfortable. The crowd was over-anxious and getting pushy. At one point, King reportedly said he could be trampled. It wasn't very long after that, somewhere around 11:05, this march fell apart.
We heard a great sound of as a gun had fired, a bomb had blown off.
That sound was young, restless members in the march who had begun smashing windows of storefronts.
They were throwing boulders in the plate glass windows.
It got rough. It got really rough when the police come in and broke it up. And that's when Loeb called the National Guard in.
And when that happened, excuse the expression, but all hell broke loose.
All hell broke loose. They started, the police who were lined up with tanks on the side, police lined up almost body to body, they start throwing tear gas in the crowd. One of those bombs fell right down in front of me, and I was on the second line right behind Martin, and of course it blinded me, and I fell during the melee, and I couldn't get up because of the crowd pressing me. Two young high school kids, boys who had come walk downtown, they came and saw that I was down on the ground.
And you're a city council member.
City council person. Police kicking me, and they told him who I was. And they said, I don't give a damn who he is. If you don't get him up and get him out of here, we're going to kill him.
By then, King had already been rushed to safety, but hundreds were left bloodied by batons and blinded by the tear gas. A 16-year-old boy was shot to death. The march became a tragedy and a tremendous setback for King and the movement.
The demonstration here yesterday was something that I had no part in planning. If I had had part in planning the march, I think it would have been different.